Welcome to the Swim Swam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges. Joining us today, 2020 Olympic head coach for the women's team, NCAA champion, head coach of the Stanford Cardinal women. Today, we're talking to Greg Meehan. Greg, how's it going?
Good, Coleman. Happy to be with you. It's still weird to hear 2020 Olympic team because it was not in 2020, so I never know what to refer to it as. But yeah, it's good to be with you today.
Thanks for being with us. That's still a weird one for me too. It feels like I'm lying every time I say that, but that's how it goes. Big news yesterday, obviously. Regan Smith announced that after 1 year at Stanford, she's moving to ASU. She's going pro. She's going to train with Bob Bowman. So first off, just from your end, did you and Regan have a conversation about that move from Stanford to Arizona State? And if so, from what you can share, what did that look like?
Yeah, it was. We had a conversation last week, and then kind of a follow up yesterday. Monday, and that was before she kind of made it public to our team, and then out to the rest of the world. But we talked about it, and it was a really good conversation. I think. One of the things in these situations, it's of course in full transparency. Like I'm disappointed. I'm sad. Reagan's someone that's been a part of our program this year, but really, like she and I have had a relationship since she was 15 when she was at her first World Championships. I had the privilege of coaching her through that experience, and then again in 2019. And then again last summer at the games. So, it's sad to, for me personally, and then I know for our team, because that's their friend, that's their teammate. And so it's of course it's disappointing. And while, we talked through some of the reasons that she's leaving, I think it's okay that, we weren't necessarily on the same page as to whether or not that's a good reason. I think it's okay that, as I look at that, like I think that this was going to be the best place for her, but I believe that she believes that the move is what she needs. And I respect that. And, I can accept that. I think that that's really important because we're still going to have a relationship moving forward. And so she'll always be Stanford Cardinal. She'll be, a part of last year's team forever, and just wish we had more time with her.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Just from your standpoint, you've gone through this before with professionals, and you've trained a lot of really good professional swimmers. How do you as a coach grapple with that of just you have this vision for them, but then they still decide, hey, this is what I need for my career right now?
It's a great question, Coleman. And I think it's that transition is so unique to each individual, right? And I think it just happens through more dialogue and more conversations. This situation was certainly unique compared to our two in the past. Those were more planned out. And that was at a time when NIL was not a thing yet. And so, for Katie and Simone, when they were making decisions to go professional, it's because they didn't have financial opportunities that current, NCAA athletes have. And I think that's a good thing, right? I do think that change is good. But it's changed the landscape a little bit on timing of that. And so for using those two as good examples, for Katie, it was part of the recruiting process with her and part of the discussions. That was very much a planned, okay, you're gonna come out of the Olympic Games, you're gonna go 2 years as an NCAA student athlete, 2017, 2018 NCAA seasons, and then you're gonna turn professional because I really feel like it takes a little bit of time to learn how to be a professional athlete. And that's a 2 year, what we thought was a 2 year window to the games. Obviously that turned into a longer stretch. But that was kind of the reasoning there. And then for Simone, when she went through that process, she had already been here. She was here in the fall of 2014. So she had already had 2 years as a Stanford student before, going to the games and having a great, 2016 games in Rio. Came out and then competed again 17, 18. She could have gone pro a year earlier. She wanted to stay one more year. She actually still had an additional year if she wanted it because she redshirted that Olympic year. But similar reason, felt like the timing was right. After 2018, let's make the change. We've got a 2 year window to the games. So that's, my experience with those two. And even though they were somewhat through a similar lens, different experiences. And then for Katie, as she wrapped up last quad, and then it was like, okay, what's next? We had really good conversations about where to go. And I felt honored to be part of that conversation with her and felt like, Florida was a perfect landing spot. And Anthony's a great coach, as is Bob. And that's going to be a great landing spot for Regan. And so, it just, each conversation is somewhat unique. This was a little bit different in that, she's still a little younger than they were when they made those transitions and just had one NCAA season under her belt and just kind of 9 months here at Stanford. But I think that's where it's, you engage in conversation, you try and listen, and then, okay, based on what they're saying and what you're hearing, you're putting a plan together as best you can. And so that's just kind of how I've always approached it.
Do you feel like just for you as a coach, you were able to navigate that conversation with Regan differently, now in 2022 versus when you had them 4 or 5 years ago? Again, just for your growth and communication process as a coach of professionals.
Yeah, I think it still is different. Just the timing of it was different. And I hadn't coached her, even though I had kind of coached her on trips for a really long time. I'd only coached her for that 9-month period versus, at that point I had coached Katie for 2 years. Simone I had coached for 4+ years. So it just is a different, it's a different vibe. We're in a different place in our relationship at that point. And so I hope that I learned from that. I'm sure I still made mistakes because that's what we do. But learning from them and being better moving forward is really important.
Yeah. And so then, obviously your primary role is the head coach of the Stanford women. When, as you said, the team loses a teammate and a friend through that process, how do you lead the move forward for the NCAA team, especially as this team will be a top contender for a title this year?
We got on a team Zoom yesterday because we're, as you may know, we're on the quarter system. So they're not back here for just under a month. They get back on September 6th. So I just didn't want to wait that long to get together as a group and felt like it'd be important yesterday to connect. She had shared that news with our team on Monday night. So they'd had a little bit of time to process. But really the goal of getting together was just getting together and talking about it a little bit from a high level. But then also just knowing that people are going to process this in their own way and, grieve, for lack of a better word, in their own way. They all care about her a lot. And as coaches, Tracy and I do as well, right? I mean, you spend time building relationships with people. And so for the last year, her teammates and friends have been building strong relationships with her. So there's a grieving process there for them, just as I'm sure, and I know that it was really hard for Regan to walk away from this. And that was not an easy decision and wasn't taken lightly. And because of those relationships that she had built. So it was important that we just got together and talked about it. And it was a good opportunity to just kind of touch on some other things. And, we're going to miss her as a human first and foremost. And then, yeah, of course, we're going to miss her performances, but teams are never defined by one person. And so, we've got to move into this season excited about what's ahead. And to your points or to your commentary, I appreciate that. I do think we're a contender next year. Even with the news of yesterday, I think we've got a really good squad, and they're going to be excited about the opportunity that's going to be in front of us. Especially the more that we remove ourselves from kind of the COVID experience here, the more we normalize, and that's exciting. I know it was tough everywhere. It just was brutal here in Santa Clara County, and so last year was mostly normal, but not quite there. So really looking forward to okay, this year we're kind of going to be back in sort of how we normally operate. And that is something that our team is excited about. We're getting ready to go to Maui a couple of days after we get back. And that's a trip that we haven't been able to take for the last few years. And so there's a lot of excitement in and around that.
Yeah, it's just funny to even hear you talk about the normalizing from the pandemic, because obviously COVID is still happening, but
yeah.
I live in Texas, and it's a lot different here than Santa Clara County. So I sometimes, I even forget that aside from maybe wearing an occasional mask, that certain places are, it's very real. So in terms of this new team, this new look Stanford, which happens every year, you've got quite a class coming in from SwimSwam's perspective. You've got 5 of our top 20 recruits, 3 of our top 10. What excites you about this incoming class? I as you said, you probably haven't spent too much time with them. I'm sure you've talked to them individually, but as a team, I don't know how much you have communicated with them. But from personality and obviously from just a swimming perspective, what excites you about getting these fresh new faces on campus this year?
Yeah, all of it, Coleman. I think that's the cool part. Each season brings its own unique team, right? Like the team this year, it's the only time that this will be that particular team. As seniors depart and move to the next phase of their life, and freshmen come in, it's constantly evolving and changing. And there's the sad part of that where seniors leave, and it's like saying goodbye to Brooke a couple weeks ago, knowing she's getting ready to go to the Peace Corps, and we're not going to see her for 2 years. But then on the flip side of it, we have this amazing group of young women that are going to be here in less than a month, and that's exciting. And it's kind of it's sort of this youth movement that we have within our program. We had 8 freshmen this year. We've got 8 freshmen coming in next year. We're really going to be bottom heavy in terms of the how the classes rank out numbers wise, but it's an awesome group. They're super talented, no doubt. To your point, you touched on what they do in the water, but watching them on their official visit in the fall, being together and spending time together and spending time with our team, and then just watching them and continuing to get to know them through the year. I'm really excited. This is a pretty cool group, and I feel like they're going to walk in the door and kind of hit the ground running pretty well in terms of our team dynamic, because they know the class of 2021 really well as well. Some of them were friends even before they made the decision, and so there's this pretty cool vibe amongst that group, and it's going to be fun to watch.
So I got to talk to Torri Huske not too long ago after her Worlds and after she went on vacation with Taylor Ruck in Italy. And it was cool to hear her talk about how the uniqueness of Stanford and how she changed outside of the pool during her freshman year and what she picked up. But I don't want to ask about any of that. I want to ask about her training for the 400 IM. What was that about, Greg?
You recognize what people are good at, and you recognize what they're going to benefit from, and you run with it. And it doesn't matter if it fits into a box or not. I have felt like well-rounded swimmers have always thrived here. I think we're much better in that than sort of the specialization. Even some of our best sprinters, if you look back at Simone, like she was still a really well-rounded swimmer. Torri is a very well-rounded swimmer. And so, you look at, and then you look at like this class coming in with Kayla and Claire and Charlotte and everybody, like they're good at a lot of different things. And so as we evaluate anybody, it's like, all right, what's their training backgrounds? How do we like take a good chunk of that and still find a way to add, to make it better. And if that means that Torri Huske is in the 4 IM group on Thursdays, then so be it. It's, and then sometimes too, it's just about like training partners, getting the right people together at the right time during the week. Because we don't have set groups where like they only train with this group the whole week. They're constantly like moving and shifting around based on what's going to most benefit them. And I think even for Torri, for all of our team, like coming out of the Olympic year and just all the craziness of it and the pressure and everything else, and in this area trying to again get back to normal, like we didn't want to squeeze too early. And so it's like, let's let our freshmen adjust. Let's just kind of get back into what we do really well. And then it was, learning about such a big class and who's going to benefit from which group. And that class, swam for the most part swam really well this year in the short course season. And then some have continued to do really well in the long course season. Feel like we're learning about them. And so, yeah, I would anticipate Torri's going to stay in that group for the time being. She just, Evan, like they would just do a lot of swimming and she would do a lot of IM sets and as a club swimmer. And so we've kind of taken that and that helps her. She needs work regardless of her event profile. And she's still young. She's 19. It's not time to go to the sprint well at this age for someone who can do so many different things. And I feel like, that how can you draw a direct line from 400 AM group to, going 52 and 100 freestyle? I don't know that you can do that, but I just like in my gut, I know that was part of why she was really good this summer in all of her events.
I do like that you added that part of matching swimmers, because that's certainly not something that comes out on paper or comes, we hear about a lot, but obviously that makes a big difference of who the people you surround yourself with or the people your coach surrounds you with. Does it hurt you that obviously we talked, she didn't get to swim the 2 IM this summer because of the event conflict, but it's like, she doesn't swim the 2 IM and she swims the 50 fly. Do you get a little ping in your heart? In your 400 IM heart of like, she's doing this?
100%. It was painful to put that entry in, but no, it's that there are challenges with someone like Torri in the event profile. Just how do you map this out? And at some point you need to go with quality over quantity. And I think as an observer, last summer in 2021, like watching her move through Olympic trials and just racing everything, just level of fatigue as the meet went on. It's like, okay, I want to avoid that. And so we just want to be a little more specific on events to try and make the team in especially with an April World Trials. I think that was the other thing that affected the event schedule. It wasn't just how the events lined up with each other. It was like, at some point you want to make sure you're taking care of the things that you feel most comfortable with qualifying in when you have a very limited window to qualify. It was NCAAs, and then 6 weeks later we were at World Trials. And so that's a very unusual turnaround in the US, right? That may be normal in some other spots, but for the US, normally our qualifying meets aren't until June at the earliest. So to have it in April is so unusual. It's like, all right, if we want to be really good in 100 fly and 100 free, then let's start to just go that direction. She's good in the 50 fly. So of course it's like, all right, you got to do it. You don't need to do the 200 IM, but it did hurt a little bit. And that's an event too, that's like, shouldn't have a lot of experience with. It's not an Olympic event in terms of the 50 fly. So we'll look, kind of at the new schedule. It's obviously redesigned a little bit for Paris and the Olympic trials in 2024 with the 9-day schedule. Like, this is what we wanted to do, is add another day to a really long meet. But I think the changes that we made, the decisions that we made, and the changes that we made in training helped her through, not just through the trial meet in April, but at Worlds, carrying 16 races through the course of that meet was super impressive. And she was running out of gas a little bit on the end, but it was really important that she went through that. That's the first time that she had carried that many swims at that high level of a meet. And so it's like, okay, she handled that pretty well. Now we have that to that lens to kind of look through as we look to the next 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to ask about that and you answered, but I am curious about the lens that you looked through. Obviously you were a head coach for Worlds, I think for the past two, for 15, 17, 19.
17
right?
and 19. Yeah. I was an assistant in 15 and 16.
Okay. And then obviously you were the head Olympic coach. And so this year, Tracy Slusser, your assistant, associate was on staff. And so how were you viewing Worlds, and how were you digesting it as taking a step back?
Well, I was on the work. So Tracy was here. I was over there with our crew in Budapest. And so it was initially I was thinking about not traveling this summer. But then having two freshmen on that world championship team, and like, okay, first time really seeing them through a full cycle. I wanted to be there. So I kind of changed course and was, really excited to be asked to be on staff. And so I went with them. And so it was great to be there and just like visually work them through that meet, or help them work through that meet. They're the ones doing the work, but that camp in Croatia leading into the competition in Budapest, it was great to be there and see it. But I was there. Sorry, my lights are on a timer. But it was really nice to be there as an assistant coach and not as the head coach. And Anthony and Todd did an amazing job leading Team USA. And it was really fun to be there in a different role and like, not have to do all of all the hard decisions at times. But the staff was great. Like, I just really enjoyed getting to spend time with Anthony and Todd. And I had never really spent time with Bill Dorncott, and he was amazing. Carol and I are friends, so I've known her for a long time. So it was fun to be there with her as well, and with Bruce, and just like it was great. And so, it was a different role for me, and then I wasn't the head coach, but a really enjoyable role nonetheless.
I heard Todd got you guys drinking Monsters. Was that the drink?
Well, there was a Budapest or Hungarian version called Hell. So
yeah,
I was drinking Hell. It was terrible. So I'm back to my ways of coffee. But Todd was the head coach. He asked me to do it. I'm gonna toe the party line there.
That's awesome. Yeah, that sounds terrible to me.
It really was. Yeah. It's like carbonated sweet tarts. It's just not. It's not good.
Yeah, that sounds awful to me, but nice. But so you got to be on staff as an assistant, obviously in a different role. Do you feel a difference in your day-to-day life now, knowing that in 2 years you will not have to prepare to be an Olympic head coach?
Yes. Not to oversimplify it, but yes, there were a lot of things that were unique to the last quad, right? And we as in Dave and I happened to get appointed a little earlier than normal. It was the first games in a while where there wasn't a kind of national team head coach / director role. Lindsay as national team managing director, is a slightly different role maybe than what Frank had in the past. And so and I know Dave would say this as well, like we really appreciated being a part of a lot of the decisions that were being made with Lindsay, leading into what we thought was going to be in 2020, and the camp planning and everything else, and felt like we had a great plan. And then the world stopped, obviously, and the stress was already a lot going in, and then it just like was on steroids essentially that next year. And so having that like headspace cleared out has been really good for me, in a lot of different ways. I think it's allowed me to just stay a little more relaxed, kind of take a breath. I was still really busy this year, but it was a good busy, and just like a singular focus of our college team, because we didn't have any pros this year, and we've never had big pro groups, right? We've only had Stanford people in our pro group, so just not having that and just being able to focus on our college team was awesome. And, kind of projecting that out and what that looks like. I'm excited about putting a plan together for our group here. And then I know that, the head coaches and Lindsay will put a great plan in place for the international piece of it.
Speaking as someone who obviously you've had lots of world champ experience, coaching, Olympic experience, and then now you're obviously training a group who will vie for those world champ and Olympic spots. I'm just curious about your thoughts on that 2024 World Championships and how you feel like that will fold into the prep for the Paris Games.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a hot topic right now. I think first and foremost, as I pull the lens back, if I take off my Stanford hat for a second, I know I just said I don't have to do this anymore, but if I put on my USA hat, it's like we need to make sure that our relays are really good next summer, to qualify for Paris, right? Every relay that you medal in 2023 Worlds, you qualify for Paris, and you don't have to in 2024. Now, if Team USA needs to, like, they will qualify in 2024, but it does give a little bit of flexibility to coaches and athletes on going if things are already taken care of from that perspective, right? And I'm hoping that we'll have some athletes that will be in a position to be on relays next summer, to help Team USA do that. So, that's kind of one piece that's into it. And then you look at the lens of NCAA athletes, and okay, that's a really tough time, right? That doesn't make a whole ton of sense. So just weighing out are we going to swim collegiately in that quarter for us, in that winter quarter of 2024, or take time off and go to Worlds? I just think I thought it was maybe in January, but I believe that it's actually in February. And so you're just getting closer and closer to U.S. Olympic team trials. So it's not as though I would recommend that people don't go. It's just, if we have athletes qualify, we would be very careful about that decision. And if they were to go, how many races they were to take on. Because I think that's the other piece of it. You can come out of an 8-day meet and you're just beat up, right? And I don't know that I would want that for our crew. Again, I'm just speaking for our athletes. I don't know that I would want that for our crew in February, like coming out of a meet like that and just being crushed. And then knowing that, okay, I've got to be really good in June, and then I've got to be really good in July, if they qualify. So, I've already put a lot of thought into that. And the next step is really just kind of waiting and seeing how next summer goes, and hopefully qualifying for the 2023 Worlds team. And then it'll kind of turn into individual conversations for those athletes that might qualify in 24.
In a similar vein, in that once we get past the summer of 2023 into the official Olympic year, do you put any more of an emphasis on long course with your collegiate athletes who are, have hopes of performing really well at trials and making that Olympic team? Is there anything you do? I mean, something that comes to mind is in 2016 when Dave Durden, took a group of guys to a pro swim instead of to the conference meet, right? To
Right,
Pac-12s.
right.
And, I'm not Does that manifest for you in any specific way, or have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, it does. And I don't know if it's a one size fits all. It's really taken a look at each individual and what their needs are. I think even for this past year, right, we wanted to get Regan some long course racing, so we went to the U.S. Open in November. Torri wanted to go to the short course worlds instead, so they went to two different meets, and it worked out great for both of them. They swam really well this year at the end of June. So we kind of take it individually, but there are some things that for sure we would want to have a bit more touch on long course racing. Not a ton. I don't think you want to, or I don't think you need to overdo it. If you have quality racing in the collegiate season, then you just need a little bit of touch on long course racing, because we train enough long course here throughout the course of the year that I don't feel like we're missing that part of it. Our mornings are mostly long course year round outside of, January to March. We dial back just a little bit on that. Our training camp in Colorado Springs is always all long course. So I feel like we get enough touches of that. It's a bit more about the racing piece. So it would be, okay. And this is what we did in December of 2015, kind of that last time around. It was, Maya and Simone and Felicia and some others like going to the U.S. Open in, I think at that time it was after Thanksgiving. It was December. And so just like that worked for them, and Leah Neal. And even, if you take Leah and Simone, like Leah wanted to swim collegiately and Simone didn't. And so they were on slightly different paths. And so, it just kind of like really, it comes down to, again, just dialogue, having conversations with coaches and what makes sense. I know what I believe, and I try and share that with them, and then we'll come to a good decision together.
That's a full circle for me. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk to us today, Greg. It's always great catching up with you. Do you have any parting thoughts or wisdoms before we sign off today?
I appreciate being on here, and you asked the 4 IM question. I'm gonna have Torri race the 4 IM this year once, just for you, but not for Braden. So.
Yes. Hear that, Braden? It's for me. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited, but once again, thanks a lot, Greg.
Thanks, Coleman.
You've been listening to the Swim Swam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take Swim Swam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.